Today, we have with us a really wonderful guy named Gordon Soderberg. And Gordon, he's just into making this a better world. I don't know any other way to introduce you, Gordon, except
I'm just that kind of crazy.
you're just that kind of crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
My thumb's in the way. I don't know where my camera is.
Okay. Oh, your camera is right in front of you now. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Right.
Yeah. So Gordon has been doing things to make the world better for a long time. He started out just concerned with the environment and how to make things green, how to save, like, not use so much petroleum. He was just filling me in. For example, he's standing right now in front of one of his vehicles. This is a pickup truck. And Gordon, why don't you just start out by telling the audience what you did to this truck that makes it special?
Okay, well, it's just your standard Dodge 3500 2007 Dodge Dually. But we added the second tank, and to that second tank, we added coolant lines that run from our engine coolant to heat up that siphon tube. And this moves the coolant, and these send and receive the diesel. Mm-hmm. So when I get this tank to 190 degrees, I hit a switch on the dash, and then I'm using used cooking oil or virgin seed oil from this tank, and I'm driving 90% all day long on that. And before I shut off, I switch back to the diesel tank to purge all that out of my injection system, and then I shut off and I'm ready to start the next morning. What that means is I can I have extra tanks and the centrifuge and heaters that I can collect used cooking oil from restaurants or hemp seed oil from a farm, filter it, heat, and put it in this tank, and then drive across the country. Mm-hmm. So when I took this to Texas during the hurricanes last couple of years, we filled up in grease here, brought a little extra grease with us to get us down to Texas, and then we did hurricane disaster response for a month before driving home, and we spent about $30 in diesel.
Mm-hmm. $30 to go from Detroit, which is where
it was a 6,000 mile round trip with all the different side jobs that we did once we got down there.
Yeah. So how many miles do you get to a French fry?
I don't know what the French fry correlation is, but miles to the gallon diesel versus grease, you get a little less pop per calorie out of the grease. So your mileage goes down, but your lubricity of the engine goes up because you're not stripping the engine cylinders with detergents to clean out all the nasty every time the piston goes up and down. This is being lubed twice. Mm-hmm. So it's actually better for the engine, but you got to get a little less mileage out of it. The other benefit is you can breathe what comes out of the pipe, not kill yourself.
Yeah, you're not producing any of the pollutants, and of course you're also using something that otherwise would probably just be dumped down a sewer or something horrible.
Well, in some cities it's dumped down the sewer and it's backed up the sewer and it's caused all kinds of backups. You hear about Detroit flooding all the time. Mm-hmm. They have a singular rainwater and sewer system that people have been dumping their household grease down for, 140 years. And they have what they call greasebergs in the main halls, 100 yards long, 10 feet tall, and the entire pipe. And it's nothing but a giant grease turd. Wow. And so the sewers back up on the other side of that.
Sure.
So a lot of cities are now mandating that restaurants recycle their cooking oil with a service and prove it. Chicago does it and gives them free pickup service, and that's how they fuel their trash company. Mm-hmm. Maui does the same thing.
Yeah, so that now the city is actually using the grease to collect trash.
To collect trash and make fuel for their, city park services, their diesel vehicles that take care of the parks, things like that. When we did this down in New Orleans after Katrina, we built a system to make biodiesel to fuel the off-road equipment too, because you can't put 2 tanks and a heating system on a skid steer or a tractor.
Wow.
Or you have to make biodiesel. You have to crack the triglyceride out of the grease to make biodiesel. So we made a still to do that so we could run our tractors and our other gear and actually fuel the starter fuel for the truck and the bus. So we were completely green. But when we left New Orleans, we put that system at Louisiana Tech, trained local folks on how to run it. And for the last 15 years, they've been making biodiesel for the generators that run the Jazz Fest and all the music festivals in New Orleans outdoors, and take care of the city park.
So what now you said we, and that brings us to the we in that, because you are involved with some very interesting groups, mostly like yourself, veterans.
Yep.
And I have to ask before anything, I mean, you're a vet. I don't know if you were a CB or Army Corps of Engineers.
A foreman, surgical tech.
A surgical tech. Wow.
And I deployed with the Marines as a RADMF, Rapid Deployable Medical Force.
Oh, okay. So where did you get interested in all of this environmental and science stuff, and then get it involved in your how did that?
In the Persian Gulf, babysitting oil tankers in the Straits of Hormuz kind of motivates you to find an alternative.
Ah, okay.
I was sitting on a fast frigate that's being powered by biodiesel, babysitting oil tankers that were hauling unsustainable fuel.
And you said, boy, we got to do better.
Well, I mean, we were already doing better. The United States Navy is the largest purchaser of biodiesel in the world.
Yeah.
And we're using sustainable sources to secure unsustainable sources. Now, how ridiculous is that?
Yeah. Well, we can go on.
Spending life and treasure for the last 20 years going to war over this bullshit.
Yep.
And being a corpsman, I don't like that.
Well,
so demonstrating alternative in disasters here in the United States using veteran experiences, training that we have from boot camp through our careers in the military, but deploying those in civilian circumstances, helping people on their worst day is the best use of my training I've had.
So you went down, everybody else is trying to get the heck out of Dodge there sometimes, like in Katrina, Texas.
Yeah. Good idea. Get the hell out. If you can't help, you can't help yourself. Get the hell out of the way.
Yeah. But you're going toward to help people using both your training as a corpsman and your training and your experience with biodiesel and environment, and you're going in there with these other guys, these buddies of yours, and you're trying to help people.
Yeah, it's the same training and oath that I took in the military. I'm just deploying the same stuff here, but there's no bullets flying around, so it's a lot, mellower. Especially for the combat vets that I deal with, they love it because they get to go into a really shitty environment where it's really terrible and it's all screwed up, but they're making it better as opposed to making it worse. And the people that they meet are thanking them instead of ridiculing them. Right? So it starts to rewire their brain about their experience and their military and what value that had into their future. They could now deploy good, bad, and the ugly for good.
You're part of something called Team Rubicon. And yeah. I mean, this is obviously part of what we're talking about. Could you tell people what Team Rubicon is?
So Team Rubicon is a national organization that started with 6 veterans and ER doctor that went into Haiti to do Civil War surgery, the hardcore stuff. That was 11 years ago. And I was still down in New Orleans at the time doing my thing when they came back from Haiti, and I heard about them, saw what their mission was, saw that they were organized on an international level, or weren't that organized on a national level. So I raised my hand and asked the question, why are you guys tuning all this up to deploy it elsewhere when we need it right here? And there's 2 million veterans fresh off the boat that have no interest in going overseas again, but would love to get get into the shit again and fix it. I know it firsthand because I'd been doing it by then for 6 years, full time in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
So I joined. I had the same certifications they had. I was a corpsman and a surgical tech in and out of the Navy. So I did 10 years of trauma surgery in Oakland after the Navy during the crack epidemic. So that's where I got all my combat experience, was in Oakland. So now they started, 6 guys. They came back, maybe 30, 40 of us joined them, and we started doing 6, 12-man operations in the United States, but it was regional. It was catch as catch can. In 2012, we had grown to about 300, and that's when Sandy hit New York, and they asked me to deploy all my gear, my bus, my know-how about rolling out large groups of volunteers in a disaster, because they had never deployed their entire team before, and they were all coming from different parts of the country and never met each other. And so they needed somebody that had that kind of experience to kind of hold down the forward operating base and set down the rules of engagement.
You're really like the logistics expert, among other things.
At first I was, but I wasn't trained in that. And now that we got by then we had 300 folks that had different levels of training and different types of military experience. So we had logistics professionals then that then took on those parts of my job. That I was the first guy on the fob, and then there were 6, and then there was 30, and we started dividing the workload depending upon what everybody's experience was and who could do the job better.
How's all of this getting financed? Is the federal government providing any financing, or is it just?
So the original Team Rubicon mission startup, I think it was either a Wounded Warrior or Mission Continues grant, something like that, that got Jake Wood, organized and financed to do a project. And Haiti is what he did. And then Team Rubicon evolved out of that by virtue of the media that they generated coming out of Haiti, and then the local responses that were getting into the local news that would attract local vets, and then the network of disaster responders that we're already, guys like me are already members of. So they have, organizations called Volunteer Organizations Active in Disaster. So that's all the volunteer organizations that respond, that have FEMA certifications to know how to talk FEMA talk and be in the emergency response room to deploy and know what to do.
So folks, I want to interrupt Gordon for 1 sec here, folks, to just tell you, if you look at the description of the show, Monica, who was not able to join us today, is going to put in all of these links to these organizations, which Gordon's going to provide to us. And please go and, what I try and do is go to some of these and just say, okay, how can I support? And obviously money is one way to support, but, helping to publicize is another way to support. Joining, if you have skills, you think you can help. God knows we're going to have more and more problems in this country. Climate change is real. Infrastructure decay is real. And, we need to help one another. We need to have community. So go down and look at some of these links and figure out how you can be of assistance. And, Gordon, what keeps you going?
Well, Well, like you just nailed it. It's donations that keep my organization going. We're strictly nonprofit, go donation to donation, grant to grant. And in the last year and a half, that's been pretty thin with COVID. And we've been on a rebuilding mission since getting hit with a disaster of our own and our first bus being burned to the ground and having to replace it. So we've been retooling for the last 3 years and just getting back with our feet underneath us to be able to roll out and demonstrate what we can do.
So how can people donate to you, to your personal efforts?
Yeah, so you can go to you can find the Green Veteran on Facebook. That's me. On Instagram and Twitter, I'm the Green Veteran. I kind of coined that 15 years ago. You can visit our website, veteransgreenvillages.com. So Facebook, Gordon Soderberg, currently putting our bus program back together. So our first bus burned to the ground. Unfortunately, we suffered the arson here in Detroit, like our neighbors do quite often. Our bus got burned. So it took us, that's 3 years now, but we've got a new bus. And all we have left to do on it is to convert it to run on grease before we could start deploying it. But that's a real special bus. That was built originally by another veteran, get this, 60 years ago, to document nuclear bomb blast in Arizona. From testing, he built the bus to document that live on television, color, remote broadcast. That had never been done before on the West Coast. That was Red Skelton, the comedian.
Really?
Yep. Before he started his national television program, or at the same year, he had this Red Edit production company in LA to R&D remote live television broadcasting.
Wow.
And he built 3 buses to do that. And when his contract renewal with CBS came up, they dumped him, sent him over to NBC. And when they bought out his contract, they bought out his company. And those buses were used to document the Rose Bowl for the next 20 years. Or the Rose Bowl parade and all that. So the remote camera operations were running, KTLA was running off these buses.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting prioritization? Okay. What's more important, folks? Nuclear bombs and all those issues, or the Rose Bowl?
Well, I probably didn't want color live broadcast of it. I don't know whether he got a golden parachute to get out of the way. Bought him out and moved his stuff to do something else. Or, who knows what the politics were, why he did it. But what happened was his bus got mothballed. And in the 80s, the movie industry, television industry brought it out and did a Knight Rider show with it as a bad guy vehicle that get this, took over the Knight Rider car through Wi-Fi.
I remember that episode.
Okay, so that bus is my bus now. And ironically, all the high tech that they were kind of faking then is real now. Mm-hmm. And luckily for us, the movie industry in the 2000s rebuilt the bus, stem to stern, put a whole new interior in it, made it a green room instead of a production studio. So it's got a refrigerator, washer and dryer, shower, bedroom in a sense that it's got a Murphy bed, but the back end is the same. It has a 4,000-pound lift to carry heavy things in and out of the bus, but the front of it is like, Hollywood nice. And new engine, new electrical, everything's new paint job. And they shot a few movies with it. Fast and Furious, I think, were some of them. And they auctioned it off.
And you were
Navy veteran in LA bought it. He thought he was going to use it for a recreational vehicle to recover from his stroke. and get his arm back, learning how to shift to 10-speed. 35-year-old stroke victim from a VA surgery. So he's totally retired, 100%, and he buys this bus, but it's too big. He can't park it in LA. So he finds me on the internet looking for a new bus. And he says, I love what you're doing. I need so much money for this bus. It was quite a lot. It was, they put $300,000 into this retrofit. And it only had 18,000 miles on it since that was done. So he was looking to get his money back. And I said, well, that's nice bus and everything, but I can't afford that. Why don't you rent it back to the movie industry? So he did. They used it for a Marvel FX television series episode for Legion. And returning it, they smashed the nose of the bus into something, broke the headlights, the windshield, the bumpers, and gave the kid back his keys and told him, good luck suing us. He talked to his lawyer. His lawyer says, well, you got to take a total write-off on the bus to be able to sue him for the full value. So they called me up and said, you pay for the lawyer contingency fee, you could have the bus.
Wow.
So I got a $300,000 bus for $10,000 and needed a facelift.
I hope he in turn got his money back from the movie industry.
Yeah, that's a battle he could fight, and that's not one I'm willing to wage.
No.
So we got the bus for $10,000, but it needed $18,000 worth of repairs.
Right.
So in the last 3 years, we paid for the bus and raised the money and got the nose job and got the paint job. And now it's ready to roll with, once we raise the money to convert it to running grease. Again, once I have these things running on grease, it doesn't cost me nearly anything to run.
Right.
But to get them there, it costs me money. So it's like buying a solar system. You're buying all your electrical bills all up front.
Right.
I'm buying all my fuel bills for my truck and my buses up front by buying these conversion and putting in these conversion systems.
Well,
So I need to raise probably another $10,000 to put a good system together for that bus and get it ready to roll. But that'll pay for itself in the first cross-country trip.
Right.
Consider it's $5 a gallon for diesel, and it gets 10 miles to the gallon. You can burn through $10,000 pretty quick, especially when you're going into disasters. We're not using this to recreate, and although we will be going to do service projects and training in the national forests as part of our national organization, Team Rubicon, which this is not a part of. They got their own vehicles and got their own sponsorship, and God bless them. We have 350,000 members now with all kinds of funding from ringing the bell in the NASDAQ to Home Depot giving millions of dollars and Southwest Airlines donating airfare. And we've been doing it right since Sandy and gotten a lot of attention on the big scale, but that still costs money. And the same thing I was trying to prove down in Katrina, I still have the opportunity to prove on a bigger scale with Team Rubicon, is to demonstrate those sustainable energy solutions on their projects, but not with, they don't have to take on the liability. That's why I've set up I have my own nonprofit.
Mm-hmm. So, folks, I've been talking today with Gordon Soderberg, and we're talking about sustainable energy. We're talking about diesel, but we're also talking about the healing of America, of our vets. There is something so different about what you're about, Gordon, because you really are about healing.
Well, yeah, it's kind of you think of it, healing being more of a constant than a reaction.
Mm-hmm.
So instead, preventative medicine, let's call it that, right?
That's so, yeah.
Preparing for disasters, preparative medicine, right? Avoiding an accident or a disaster is best. Cost the least, right? So environmentally, fueling this does not destroy the environment, right? On the long term. On the short term, using this with other veterans to take them into a disaster, to give them an experience of going into a place that's all screwed up, but they improve it. They're being welcomed instead of shunned. That starts rewiring their brain. So there you go, another medical application without sticking a needle into anybody, right?
Right.
And then you deploy those into the community and you start showing veterans that have a completely, the entire spectrum of politics. In military, they come from everywhere: white, black, Hispanic, and imported. I'm an immigrant veteran, green card veteran. So our politics are just as varied as the United States, but we have to throw all that away to get something done, the common mission.
Mm-hmm.
And when we can deploy that and demonstrate that in a community that has problems socially, economically, racially, we lead by example.
Yeah,
So,
I was talking to an old buddy of mine the other day, somebody I've known since my childhood, basically. And he was saying to me, and I think he's right, that probably the US military in some ways is the best solution to a lot of our problems in this country, because it does bring people together from all walks of life and all viewpoints of view, and it forces people to appreciate difference.
Unfortunately, the politics of the mission screws all that up. So the military, where it had done all that in the past and made all kinds of headways for the country in the past, first to desegregate, all that stuff. And you're right, they do create the circumstances where people are forced to throw all their boat baggage away, and then forced to go into an austere conditions and rely on each other for their very lives. That rewires their brain, but also causes all kinds of other conflict and scars that we don't need to get into today.
Right.
So, yes, I agree. However, the military is not that solution. Civilian Conservation Corps, a Green Corps, that is the solution. Bring the veterans that already have that experience from the military to run those organizations, but keep it civilian and keep the bullets out of it. We don't need it.
Amen. Amen. If we could take all of the treasure and lives and physical pain and everything that has been basically wasted in a place like Afghanistan, where we actually have accomplished next to nothing, perhaps worse than nothing, and we put all of that into helping people here in America using the same kind of effort and the same kind of commitment from the men and women who are serving. What wonderful things we could have accomplished. And, I really appreciate the fact, Gordon, that you continue to serve our country, our world, your fellow vets in so many ways. The only thing I'm going to ask you to do is please promise me that you're going to have insurance on this bus, so that if someone decides to light another bonfire.
Yeah, it was kind of the last bus was kind of a R&D bus. We got it for $3,000. The conversion cost more than the bus. So when we parked it and started doing the project here in Detroit, the insurance lapsed. I didn't expect to get a hit by arson.
Of course not.
But there you go. Nobody actually does.
Yeah, I think,
yeah, we learned our lesson. The bus will be insured. I mean, come on. I've been given a gift from Red Skelton and everybody in between, and there's $3/4 or $1/3 into that bus been sweat equity. So you bet it's going to be insured.
Good. And folks, let's try and help Gordon with his mission. Click on those links. Think about what you can possibly donate. And
can I interject?
Sure, please.
Yeah. So we are a 501c3 foundation. So it's called Plant Propulsion Inc. So the whole concept ultimately is to build these filtering systems for diesel vehicles and engines, that we could commercialize that so that we could create standards of operation for projects like mine to a fleet. So whether it's disaster response or a bunch of Uber Volkswagen TDIs run by veterans that all they're doing is Grubhub and Uber Lyft, fine. We could fuel that and put all that money back in their pocket. So the idea here is to research and develop these technologies using nonprofit projects to do the research and development, deploying them nationally in disasters, but locally and here in Detroit, we're dealing with the blight issue, which is just a hurricane, nobody showing up to clean up afterward. But we could use grant investment, business level investment, but it's the individuals that's kept us going for the last 15 years, and it's really what I appreciate the most is the $5 donation.
Thank you, Gordon. And thank you for the service, not just your service in the military, man, but your service that's ongoing, that really is making a difference, I think, for all of us. And folks, thank you for joining us here on Writing Chats and Friends. And again, please click on those links. Have a great day.
My goal is to see the Veterans Green Bus run on hemp biofuels. I'm Michael Bowman. I'm chairman of the board of the U.S. Hemp Growers Association and co-founder of First Crop, a hemp company in the United States. I've always looked at national security through an energy security perspective and always believed that we should be growing what we can grow in an environmentally responsible manner to offset particularly our imports from the Middle East that so often complicate our war machine. I've always believed that hemp is that perfect crop. Its ability to create profuse amounts of a cellulose and to turn that into advanced biofuels and biodiesel is a real advantage of this plant. We're really, I think, really on the precipice of being able to create a bioeconomy, one which many envisioned. In 1937, when the Marijuana Tax Act of '37 was put in place, Popular Mechanics called hemp the next billion-dollar crop. We were just on the edge of being able to turn that crop into fuels and bioplastics. We were at a crossroads where we're going to become an economy built on carbohydrates, a plant-based economy, or a hydrocarbon economy. And the titans of the day won that argument. And so we've spent the last 80 years developing products from oil reserves around the world and developing a very expensive and prolific military to protect those oil shipments from the Middle East, and often sacrificed our treasure, our young.
The Navy is the largest purchaser of biodiesel in the world. And we're using it to go secure unsustainable resources. So we got the 7th Fleet in the Persian Gulf running on biodiesel, securing petroleum.
It's irony.
It's, yes. You can do a lot of the things that we are pushing carbon into the air with by sequestering carbon as opposed to emitting it. And when it comes to cleaning up, the real problem with the environment and generations to come is to get the carbon out of the air. And the fastest way to do it isn't growing a tree, it's growing hemp, cutting it down 3 months later and growing another hemp plant and putting that into the earth. The more carbon sequestering we do is going to be faster than all the planting of the trees that you can imagine.
Maya Angelou said it best once, do the best with what you know, and once you know better, do better. Now we know better, and it's time for us to do better. And we know what we need to do. We have the technology. We now have the policy in place to let us do something different. And let's do better. It's just really as simple as that. We don't need to spill the blood and the treasures of our young anymore for oil.